Okay, do I have my props? Got my Domi Reverseed horns back on, since we're back to seeing the Domi Reverseed stuff in the present. I have this from Hadestown, which I got to see the other week, which was very fun. We very much enjoyed it. Some spring will come again is essentially the whole thing for the story there. I very much enjoyed Hadestown, and as did most of us that went. That was fun. And then the weekend after Hadestown, the weekend after Hadestown, we had another Comic-Con like event, and that's where I got stuff signed. And I don't remember if I've shown this yet, but I have a hammer now. I have a hammer now. Okay, don't remember if I'd shown that or not. Okay, time to get into the chapter. So, we have chapter 1172 titled The Elbath I Admire. And we just have another random cover page drawing from Oda that is some swans rummaging through Bon Clay's cosmetics and putting on makeup. So this is just fun. A lot of people are claiming this means that, like, oh, Bon Clay is still alive. We know Bon Clay is still alive. He was in one of the cover pages when it was like, one of the, from the Decks of the World cover page series that happened after the time skip. We saw that he was in New Kama Land, that he was the new queen of the New Kama Land in Impel Down. So we know he's alive. Yay. But we see him here just, doing his makeup and everything as spot on as it always is. And we just see a bunch of swans in the background having fun, which is just cute. Now we're going to get into stuff that's not so cute. In the chapter, so we have the lift ascending to the Sun Realm. And on the lift, we have the new giant warrior pirates, Scopper, Chopper, Zoro, and Sanji. At the end of the prior chapter, of course, they started all heading up, and Luffy and Loki were staying down in the underworld, the ice realm, the realm of the dead, however you want to put it for down there. And they were, Loki was taking out the giant Draugr with his hammer, with his squirrel hammer. We'll see, of course, how that ends up playing up later on in regards to how, when they get back up here to the Sun Realm. But these guys are all heading up the lift in the Sun Realm, and essentially what's happening is Scopper is giving them the rundown as to what he is aware of for what's going on in the Sun Realm. And he's like, okay, there are 3 foes up there. Their objective is clear. They plan to abduct 10 children from Elbath. And that's, all the 10 children that we saw from the school plus Colin. And it's just like, and take them to the Holy Land. The children will serve as living shields, leveraged to turn the warriors of Elbath into battle thralls. And, we see that Gerd is holding Scopper and Chopper, because Chopper is, of course, still tending to Scopper's wounds. And, of course, we see Hyrule, they're listening in. The rest of them are all listening in as well. And Zoro is just sitting on Hyrule's shoulder, which is funny. And next panel, we do see this just from a slightly different angle, and we see that Sanji is sitting on Stanson's shoulder to cover where everybody is in the lift gondola. And Scopper is continuing. Hyrule that says, 3 humans did all this? To think that not even the giant warrior pirates in Yasan could stop them. And, we just kind of get like the 3 ellipses from either Scopper or Gerd, not sure. And then Scopper's just like, sorry, I have no excuses. And of course, we saw what happened. He was going to try to attack Gunko to try to save Colin and the others. And unfortunately, Colin screamed out at the wrong point in time that was his father, giving Gunko the opportunity to, use Colin as a hostage in order to, attack, force Scopper to submit. to, surrender at that moment. And he did, because he's not going to risk his son's life for that. So, yeah, we kind of get there, and Scoffer's just like, yeah, I have no excuse for what happened. It's like, you're a parent protecting your child. It's fine. Sanji's like, they may be kids, but they're still giants, right? How can 3 people our size move them? That is a valid question. And given the fact that, like, we as the audience, as the readers, have seen what's going on, that's a valid question to be like, yeah, how are 3 humans making kids move? How are they making them, move? And Zoro kind of can't argue with that because it's a valid question. So Zoro's just like, I can't argue with Curly Brow on that one. I maybe wanted to ask the same question. So we have that, and then Scopper answers, and he's like, one of the 3 is a woman, and we see Gunko with her arrow powers, with a strange arrow ability. The children are unable to resist her, and of course we saw this with her being able to use the arrows to force the children to keep walking in the direction that the arrow is pointing, because it's compelling them to walk that way, even if they mentally don't want to do it. And then we see a picture of essentially what the end plan is, of like, get all of the kids to, and Scopper saying, they just keep marching toward the West Village Harbor. It's all over if they reach a ship and escape to sea. It'll all come down to that. So we see one of the giant ships there. We see the kids are kind of, slowly making their way down to the ship. This is just essentially like an image of not what is actually happening at the moment, but what could happen. This is like the plan of what the God's Knights want to happen here. And then Rhodes just like, why can't we just take back the kids? And Scopper's like, one of the 3 is a man named Summers. I know a bit about him. So this is just calling back to the fact that, like, during the flashback, we saw that, Scopper explained to Shanks that, yeah, the God's Knights kept coming after us again and again and again, led by Summers, in order to try to get you back, to take you back to Marige when you were a baby and a little kid. And we had to deal with Summers a lot. That's how we learned how to fight the God's Knights, and that you have to use Conqueror's Haki against them to be able to do any kind of lasting damage. And so, so this explains why Scopper knows so much about, Summers, and why Summers had an effing panic attack when he saw Scopper, which was still just one of my favorite images in this arc so far, because it's the Adele face. So Scopper is essentially explaining, he became a briar human after eating the thorn fruit. He can freely manipulate vines with sharp thorns. And this makes perfect sense for like why Scopper would know about this, just because of the history that he has dealing with Summers. He would be aware of some of Summers' abilities, some of his techniques that he uses. And assumedly, this is either because possibly when they were trying to get Shanks back, some of the other crew members maybe ended up having some of the thorns used on them as they were, trying to, protect Shanks or something like that. Something along those lines. But Summers is explaining the vines can become transparent, and he's wrapped them around the children. So this is, of course, the reference to the fact that, like, you can't touch the children because there's all of the vines on them, and you don't know where the thorns are going to be. So it's hard to be able to touch them without getting poked by the thorns. I kind of wonder if you, like, because the thorns they look invisible, but they're just transparent. It would be interesting to see if you could like dump a bucket of paint or something on them to like dye the thorns, and then you would know where to like cut to try to like rip the thorns off or something. I don't know if that would be something that would be available at the moment. We're gonna dump a bunch of paint on the kids and then everybody start hacking away at the thorns. Just don't cut the kids. Type of stuff, but I don't know. And Gerd is just like, so we can't grab them? That's so cruel. And Scopper is just like, indeed. They're as tough as iron. If you clumsily try to get the kids to break their line formation, they'll turn into pincushions. So it's like we see the image of like the kids bumping into each other, and that resulted in them getting poked by the thorns that was on someone else in the line. It's been it's been set up so they'll hurt each other. And of course, this is just like horrifying to the giants and to like even Sanji and Zoro and Chopper are just like, oh God, this is so bad. Like just like what Summers is doing on top of everything else. And then he's talking about, and now he's explaining about Killingham. Now he doesn't obviously like Scopper doesn't know Gunko or Killingham's names. He's never interacted with them before beyond this moment. But given his battle experience, it makes sense that he would be able to like pin down pretty quickly what some of the abilities are for people because he's familiar enough with Summers. And now he's explaining about like what Killingham is doing. And on top of that, the last one seems to have the power to make nightmares come true. And we see this little illustration. I like how like each of these little illustrations is showing Colin as like the person being affected because he is. Like for the vine ones, we see the vines all wrapped around, all the thorny vines wrapped around Colin. And then for this one, we're seeing like little sleeping Colin with like a Fenrir coming out of his nightmare. He's like, the things the kids find scary have come to life to prevent their escape. So again, this is coming back to the MOMAs or the MMAs that are roaming around the island and fighting against the giant warriors, against all the giants and everything else like that. What were they? There's like all the little cartoon devils running around. There's the Needhog. There's the Draugrs. There's the evil Nikas, the evil Lokis, a bunch of that stuff that are all running around Elbaf right now. The giant mothers and stuff like that are all being, conjured out of the nightmares. And he continues, the kids may appear to be waddling along in broad daylight, but it seems impossible for anyone to stop them. The intruders have set up some sort of twisted game with their 3 abilities. And Hyrudine, or no, I think it's Hyrudine it's still Scopper that says all that. And then Hyrudine says, we'll save those kids no matter what. Because of course Hyrudine and the others want to save the kids. These are, the next generation of Elbaf. We're going to find out that there's some relation to some of them in a moment. So we see the lift getting closer and closer to getting into the Sun Realm. And Goldberg seems like the quickest solution is to target the 3 ability users. I think that's Scopper saying that. Then we have Goldberg saying, even if they're as immortal as they claim, there should be a way to take them down. We could try trapping them or crushing them, maybe even eating them. Someone laughs at that. Ha ha ha, sounds promising to me. And it's like, it's the Sun Realm, prepare to disembark. And they get to the top and, it thunks into place. And they all get out. And they just see this carnage spreading out in front of them. We get like this double page spread that's just showing like the huge Needhog and several of the other nightmares. We see the Great Eric is on fire and just kind of destroy the ship of the giant warrior pirates. And Hyrudine is just just kind of horrified as to what's going on. Fair, I think all of them are. And so we see all of the monsters just destroying stuff right here. And it's just like, this is beyond anything I imagined. Are there any limits to these nightmare monsters? Look at that. Is that the Great Eric? So again, it's like all of them like, oh my God, what is going on here? This is just so much worse than we thought. And like we see a close-up of like the Great Eric burning and in pieces. And Scopper is just like, Dory and Bragi were aborted earlier, leading the charge with their crew, but they were shot down by those monsters. That can't be. Now, bear in mind, Scopper does not know about the Domi Reversi that happened. He does not know that Dory and Bragi have been Domi Reversi. He got knocked down into the realm of the dead, into the underworld, and saved by Chopper before that happened. Then Imu took over Gunko and started, dummying, reversing Dory and Bragi and a bunch of the other giants. So Scopper doesn't know about that part. He's just able to tell them about what's going on with Gunko and Summers and Killingham and their abilities. Those are what he's aware of. And then we see, is that you, Hyrudine? And they look over and we see Kashi. Here's, of course, Oimo and Kashi. We'll see Oimo a little bit later. But it's just like, Kashi-san, I'm glad you're okay. I was in the realm of the dead. Tell me what's going on. And Kashi's like, You won't believe this. Listen closely. Dory and Bragi are trying to kill Elder Jarl. And we see the Domi Reversi giants. We see Dory and Bragi, and we see a bunch of the other ones as they're just like plowing through the area, getting closer and closer to the western village where Jarl is. And again, they just like, they look like demons because that's what they are. And obviously, given what we kind of learned in the flashback about how you can essentially kind of punch someone out of being Domi Reversied, it just takes a lot in order to do it, and a lot of Conqueror's hockey in order to be able to make it feasible. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. But it is, this whole thing of just like, we gotta find a way to get them knocked out of this and get them back to normal. And that's gonna take a lot of force to get it done. That's gonna take a lot of brute force to get it done. And it's just like, they all went crazy. Please, you've got to help. You've got to stop them. So, assumedly, what happened is Kashi was just like, and then Hybridine's like, what do you mean that's what's going on? It's just like, yeah, and you got to stop him now. And I think it's Gerd that's like, Kashi-san, how about the children? And, Kashi is just so beaten and bleeding and everything else right now because he probably tried to fight against them, but he got knocked out of the way and did not get Domi Reversied himself. Which is good. We're going to see Oimo later, and he's not Domi Reversied either. But there's still a lot going on there. There's still a lot of giants that are possibly going to get Domi Reversied, and we'll see how the stuff works with, like, the Reversi board method and everything else like that. With, like, Luffy and Bonnie or someone else as, like, the white pieces activating to start flipping the giants back to being in their right minds, just maybe a little more freedom minded than just destroy everything in its path. And Kashi's like, Ripley and the others went after them, but we've had no word on their status. The kids may have already reached the harbor by now. And he's like, listen, Rodo. And Rodo's like, what? Bjorn was taken, and Rodo's like, oh no, and he's like, this is bad, and he's running out. So Bjorn was like the little emo kid that we kind of saw that was part of the group that was taken. So it's like, my little brother is one of the hostages, so Rhodes just off running after him. So Rhodes probably going to go try to join the group that are trying to save the kids. So we'll get that. And Gerd and Goldberg are running after them as well. It's just like, I'll join you, me too. So they're running after them. They're running after Road to go and try to help with that. So we still have Hyridine and Stanton that are left with this part of the group. And Sanji is talking to Kashi, and he's like, hey, Kashi, which way's the school? Nami-san and the rest should be close. And he's like, Kashi's got Sanji in his hand, and he's holding him up to show Sanji, can you see that fire? That's coming from both the school and the library. And I love the answer, why is it on fire? Yes, that is a very valid question right now, Sanji. Why are they on fire? And it's just a lot of things are on fire right now, but specifically the school and the library because of Killingham. Still haven't gotten back to the school and the library that are on fire right now. Hopefully, it's like we don't want all the knowledge from Ohara that's still in the library and all the other knowledge that the Giants have dating back who knows how long. We don't want that knowledge to get destroyed. So we'll have to see what's going on with that. And Zoro's like, anyway, you said Dory and Bragi have gone crazy? That's right. And then we get like this nice big double page spread that is essentially kind of doing a big reminder of where everybody is. And we're getting like the image along the branch again, the branch number 8, that kind of explains where everybody is at the moment. So Kashi's like, yeah, please hurry, Elder Jarl's in trouble. And we have the school and library, so we get like a little close-up of the Walrus School and the Owl Library that is just both of them on fire, and we see we know that not all of the students were taken, so we see several of the other teachers there, and they have like all of the other students outside of the school, and they're all still asleep because they were not the ones who were taken, but they're all still asleep, laying there on the ground. And then we have next up on the branch, we have like where Saul is, and then we have where near the library, the Straw Hats. So we cut it, Close-ups of that, where we have Robin going, the library is burning down, and she's the one still trapped in the thorns from Summers, and she's possibly still trying to get out of them. She's having like horrible trauma flashbacks to to O'Hara right now with the library burning down. And then we have Sanji going, or then we have Jinbei, and he's like, I doubt Chopper will be back anytime soon. And Brook's gone off somewhere. He must be up to something. Some of the other translations had this as like Brook looked like he had a thought and then ran off or something like that. So we don't see Brook here at all. And then Nami and like the thing with Brook is like some people are like maybe he realized who Gunko is or something like that. Maybe he had an idea. We'll see how that ends up playing out. We'll see. And Nami's like, we need to get rid of these arrows before the kids are carried off. And of course, they're still, Nami, Brook, and Jinbei are all still tied up with the arrows. Brook assumedly is as well. Otherwise, if he had gotten out of the arrows, he would have freed them as well. But he may be able to like run around at the moment. And so Nami is, of course, like, we need to get out of these arrows and we need to help save the kids. And then we have Usopp here going like, Master Bragi, or Master Dory, Master Bragi, I can't stand seeing you like this. Because, of course, Usopp just adores Dory and Bragi so much in the Elbaf culture. And he hates that that he had to watch them be turned into these monsters, and that now they are being forced, because of this new programming inside of them, to go and to try to kill Elder Jarl, who is a man that they very much admire, and forced to attack their kingdom, their home. So we're seeing again another, the other area is showing where the okay, so there's the dummy reversied giants, and we see Dorian Bragi here, and it's like, kill Jarl, please stop, captains, open your eyes. So that's trying to get the other giants are trying to stop them. It's just like the dummy reversied possessed giant pirates en route West Village, so that's where they're heading. Then we have the child rescue team that are on their way to the part of the branch where the kids are, so that way they can get to the kids and hopefully at least maybe try to do something. We'll see. And that we have Ripley and Oimo, and along with a couple of the others. It looks like one of the moms has joined the brigade, and it's just like, hang in there, kids, begone, you vile creatures. So they're trying to get there, and of course Ripley's running there because that's where her son is. That's where Colin's going to be. And we don't see Frankie or Lilith or Bonnie here. Oda has kind of made it a point at times to be able to show them like in like Ripley's cloak or something, but they don't seem to be here, so they may have gotten shifted off to somewhere else. Like maybe Lilith had an idea or Frankie had an idea, and they're going to go try to do something to try to help with that. So we'll see what's going on there. We see back by the elevator is, of course, where the current location of the group that just came up from the underworld are, and then of course we see where the kids are en route to the harbor. And it's the hostage group, and it's a bunch of the kids are just like, we're heading to the harbor, aren't we? If we get there. And Colin's like, stop whining, we're warriors of Elbaf. And one of them's like, but we're not warriors. So we see Colin and Ilya, and we see several of the others, and we know that Bjorn is part of this group, and he's Rode's little brother and such. So we're seeing that. And then the last group is in the Western Village, and that is where Jarl is. And it is, if you want to run, run. And Jarl's like, we have no choice, or like one of the others says, we have no choice, Elder Jarl. Captain Dory and Captain Bragi won't listen to us anymore. And he's just like, I won't. It's like, if you want to run, run. I won't retreat. There's still something I've got to tell Elbaf. So Jarl is being a warrior up to the end. He's like, I saw the way that my best friend, the way that, Jarl died, and I'm not, the way that Jarl died, I'm not, dying. I'm going to try to do what I can to protect Elbaf, and if that means that I have to then, like, reveal this secret that I've been holding in for the last 14 years, I need to do it now, or otherwise, what other choice am I going to have? So we see the transponder snail, and we see Kulik, and he's picked up the receiver, And this is being broadcast all over Elbath, all across Elbath. And he's like, listen, people of Elbath, I will tell you everything before I die. Elder Jarl. And like we see this picture of like kind of from the perspective of like Oust Castle downward, with like a bunch of the nightmare monsters in the background and the village at the end, at the at the bottom of the castle and stuff like that. And Jarl continues, and he's just like, our late king, our late dear King Harald, always believed in Elbath coming together with the rest of the world, and that led to his attempt to join the world government. And we see the close up of Gunko Emu there, and like just like the dot dot dot. And Jarl continues, but his efforts were shunned and betrayed 14 years ago on that faithful day. And we see like several of the others who are there trying to like fight against a bunch of the different monsters, and like they're listening in on what's going on here, and they're like, Elder Jarl. And we see like one of the Domi Reversi giants is attacking one of the villages, and it's just, I saw it all with my very own eyes. Harald and all those soldiers were killed by the act of a demon. Harald struggled to his last breath to keep Elbath from falling into that demon's hands. And we see several of the other giants are like, wait, so Loki didn't kill our king? And we see one of the Moma, who is like, it looks like a bulldog, and it's just like, I held my tongue, fearing that our people would rise up in revenge, leading us into an untimely war our king never wanted. Loki took the people's anger upon himself when he sailed out to sea. And like we're just seeing like the reactions from like so many of the other people who live on Elbath, so many of the other giants who live on Elbath. They're just like, okay, maybe we were a little too harsh on Loki. That okay, maybe we need to have rethought that. And Jarl is continuing. He may have always been boorish, but he is innocent. What? And we zoom into like where Zoro is sitting on Hyrule Children. Of course, they're hearing this being broadcast all over Elbath, and Zoro's like, "That's the gist, but it's not quite how I'd put it." And Hyrule is just like, "Don't get carried away, Elder Jarl." He's like, please don't do that. And then we get like another awesome looking double page spread here, where we have Gunko Emu in the middle, and then we have Killingham and Summers on either side. I don't think they're all in the same place, but it's just showing them all three together. And we have Jarl continuing. Now today, 3 new demons have appeared to subjugate our nation. I had hoped this matter was behind us, but we are once more in need of great power. And we have Summers going, seems this job's over. Guess I'll go back to sleep. Summers. And like we still have, we get like a more close up of like the burning library and the burning school. And Jarl is continuing, I'm speaking to you now, demons. You can take our culture and our history, but let our little ones go. And we see Ange, and we see Ronja as he's continuing, and he's just like, if you think this act will crush our spirit, you've made a grave mistake. We will not show you the same patience Harald did. And we see several of the other injured giants that are there that have been beaten up. And like Gunko Emu is just like not responding to this. It's just like thinking and listening. And Jarl continues. You speak of subjugating us and picture our people to be your slaves. Who the hell do you bastards think you're dealing with? And we see Colin and the others as they're hearing this. Forgive me, little ones. Cover your ears if you can. And we have Usopp yelling, well said, Jarl. The Elbath I admire would never bend the knee. A Game of Thrones reference thrown in there. Oda's a Game of Thrones fan. And we get like this, outside shot of Elbath as a whole. And Jarl is continuing. If the Harley prophecies are true, the world is bound to face a great divide one day. I know we have the last double page spread of the chat, the last 2 pages. And Jarl, great close up on Jarl. So be it. From this day forward, all Elbath will stand against the world government. And of course, this is just very similar to, like, this is, we know that Luffy and the Straw Hats way back in Enies Lobby declared war on the world government in order to try to get Robin back. And then, they've essentially declared themselves as enemies of the world government multiple times. As the Goro say, the world government multiple times already. Egghead very much had that, and other ones had it too, where that's being very much addressed. But like in this case, it's just like, oh, so many things, so many things going on here. And it's just like, yeah, it's the whole it's, I have a feeling some people are going to make parody or references to this as like in Braveheart, where they have like the big speech there, they can take our lives but they can't take our freedom and everything else like that. And I'm like, well, warrior culture there. And Jarl continues, did you really think some thorns, illusions, and this little reversey game would be enough to make us bow? And we see Gunko Imu there again, still not saying anything. And Zoro's listening in, and he's like, I like this geezer. Yeah. And Hyrudine's like, I bet you do. 300 years ago, he was known as the strongest being to ever hail from these waters. The reference to how strong Jarl and Yorl used to be when they were in their heyday as their version of the giant warrior pirates. And we see a bunch of the other giants who are there, who haven't been fighting yet, but they've been being affected because of a bunch of the other stuff that's going on. And they're just like, yeah, well said, Elder Jarl, is like what they're screaming, and Jarl's continuing. We will never submit to your dominion. What say you, proud warriors of Elbath? Well said, Elder Jarl, well said, is like what they're screaming. Like, Usopp just has like the hearts in his eyes for how much he's like admiring this right now, and he's just like, oh, the Elbath I know and love is back. And then Nami's just off to the side. We get it already, Usopp. Focus on getting rid of these damn arrows. It's like, I get it, Nami. I get it. Let Usopp have this little moment here. Everybody still wants Usopp to have a good moment in this arc. I want him to also, but I'm not as hell bent on it as some other people are, which is fair. But I like Usopp. And then we have, we see Dory and Broggy there. They have arrived at the Western Village. They're just at where Jarl is. And Jarl is still talking into the Den Den Mushi. We will protect the peace Harald dreamed of. Yeah! And like, Dummy Reversey, Dory and Broggy have shown up, and the others are trying to protect Elder Jarl as best they can. And from there, we cut to the last 2 panels. And we have, Hyrudean and Stanton along with Zoro are there. Sanji, I think, headed off toward, possibly with Kashi, but probably not since Kashi was pretty injured, headed off toward where the school is. So he's probably like, skywalking to where the school is. Skywalkering to where the school is. I gotta make the joke. And, it's just like, we're finally here. They said if we get caught up between them, it's over. So, like, they're kind of getting explained of, like, don't get between any of the giants who have been Domain Reversey, because then that'll Domain Reversey you. Obviously, because of the theory that we have about, like, you have, there's, like, the theory of, like, oh, you have to be, like, Domain Reversey. It only works if you're on your home island. So, like, the Straw Hats, if that's true, the Straw Hats would all be pretty much immune from being Domain Reverseyed anywhere other than, the home island that they're from. Zoro with, the island where Shimosuke Village is, Luffy with Dawn Island, stuff like that. Nami on the Oikot Kingdom. Different things like that where it's just like, they're not on their home island, so they could technically be immune to it, but we don't know if that's the true case here. That hasn't been explained one way or the other. That hasn't been confirmed. Could be, could not be, we're not sure yet. And, so they at least know to kind of avoid that. And then we look at Zoro, and Zoro's like grabbing one of his swords. I think it's Enma, and he's like, "Don't worry, I have a plan." And it's like a spark of resistance flares. And no break next week, so that'll be fun. We're supposed to get another chapter next week. We'll see how that pans out. Um, but this chapter was essentially just like to get because we came out of the longest flashback thus far in One Piece history, I believe, with everything with the Harold flashback and everything. Harold, Rocks, Shaki, Shanks, Dragon, flashback, all of that, Loki, all of it, all of that flashback there. Um, so we had all of that, and now we're coming out of that, and we do kind of need, it could be a little bit of we'll give the readers a little bit of a reminder as to like where all of the characters are at the moment, what this, kind of where the stakes are at the moment, a little bit of, reminding of that. And I think that that's perfectly reasonable. And the way that Oda structured it was Gabon giving Zoro and Sanji and the others, and the New Giant Warrior Pirates, the information as far as he's aware, what's going on up there. And of course, he knows what's going on with Gunko's arrows and the thorns and the nightmares. Didn't know about the dummy reverse yet, but he still gave them a good chunk of information that would allow them to be like, okay, we need to take those guys down. Now they got to deal with the dummy reversey element of it, and we got to see how everything's going to end up being, put together. I do have a thought. In regards to something that could be useful that Lilith could do. We know that they had the bubble guns on Egghead Island, and I don't know if they brought any of them with them. Like, I don't know if Lilith had one on her when they were escaping, but if they had a bubble gun, they could try to, pop, put each of the kids into a bubble, and then, although that would have to be a pretty big bubble. That would have to be a fairly big bubble, but try to put each of the kids in the bubble so that way it's like, and since the bubbles are sea prism stone based, they wouldn't be able to be popped by the thorns. And that might be a way of at least kind of keeping it so they can try to get the kids out of there. If they can destroy Gunko's arrows, they can at least have it so the kids are going to be, semi-safe inside of the bubble for the time being. They can't poke each other, and that might be a decent way of doing it that way, but I don't know exactly yet. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But that's just a thought for a way that could work to try to get, to kind of keep the kids safe while they essentially try to buy time to take out Summers to negate the thorns, or to take out Gunko so they can get rid of the arrows or something like that. We'll just have to wait and see. And Zoro has Conqueror's Haki. Theories about Sanji having Conqueror's Haki. If Sanji's able to, hit the arrows with, Haki infused whatever, or Zoro's able to hit them with, chopping them up with, Haki or something like that, that might be enough to at least stop the arrows so the kids or stop moving. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. But that's what we have for this. Yeah, the first part of the chapter essentially recap, but giving it in an information delivering way by having Scopper explain it to them, and then we got okay, now we're getting a little more caught up. We got it revealed to the realm, to Elbaf, that Loki is innocent in this regard, that he did not kill Harold, that they are standing against the world government now. So we'll see how all of that plays out. So that at least means that when Loki arrives up in the Sun Realm, when him and Luffy get up there next chapter or chapter after that, depending on whatever is going on, when they get up there, they're at least not going to be meeting resistance from the other citizens being like, hey, why is Loki unchained? This isn't right. It's like, no, Loki's innocent. It's fine. He didn't actually kill Harold. Well, he did, but there was a reason behind it. But we'll go over that later. The demons are the ones we have to deal with right now, and we have to find a way to, undummy reverse Idori and Bragi and the others. So we'll see what's going on there and save the kids. So that's what we have. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I don't need hiccups right now. Stop it. Thank you for enjoying the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.